Welcome to Wisdom on the Front Porch. Subscribe, ring the bell, like, and share the wisdom.
Welcome to another episode of Wisdom on the Front Porch. And on my front porch today, we have Bruno, who is in London right now. So how are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you for your invite. I feel very honored to be here. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. So tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I'm a university professor here in the UK. I have been teaching to my students for, I lost count, 30 years, business modules, but also I'm a consultant for the same amount of time, advising companies on import-export activities, international marketing strategies, international negotiation, cross-cultural strategies, but also in the last few years, I wrote a book titled The Art of Compassionate Business, where I compile a lot of research studies on how to be more profitable, but also more human-oriented. There are two things that are not incompatible, and since then, 5 years ago, we started advising companies on, for example, how to develop a much more psychologically safe workplace, how to develop much more meaningful communication with different stakeholders, such as customers, employees, community members, suppliers, business partners, but also how to develop a much more meaningful business mission, which include economic aspects, profit market share, but also include social impact and environmental effect, positive environmental effect, bringing about a better planet. And this is quite interesting because, according to my research, I observed that there are hundreds of companies that are already testing out this new business paradigm, which include not only the hard indicator of business success, such as profit, market share, but also what I call the qualitative aspect of business, what build strong, long-lasting relationship with different stakeholders, such as these qualitative aspects are, for example, camaraderie, kindness, compassion, generosity, gratitude, and others.
Yeah, and those are usually things we don't think about as business, but they're very important, especially if you want to keep your clients and you want them to refer you to other people they know.
Yes, and this is quite important because at the end, in business, everything is interdependent. Many companies don't think about this way, but in practice, they are much more focused on what can be counted, what can be measured precisely, such as productivity, profitability, market share, increasing sales. However, we have to understand that in business, the most important aspects are not the quantitative aspect, what can be measured precisely, but the qualitative aspects. For example, compassion, camaraderie, kindness, and others. And why this is so important? Because we want all these stakeholders, suppliers, community members, business partners, customers, on our side. No company can succeed without these stakeholders. And you cannot force them to cooperate with your company. When you build this robust relationship with the stakeholders, by meeting this stakeholder need duly, these stakeholders are more prone to cooperate with your company. Instead, when you dismiss their needs, when you don't care for customers, and on the contrary, you try to deceive customers or manipulate them, when you exploit employees, this means that you don't meet the employees' minimal needs. When you pollute the environment, not meeting the needs of this community, or when you develop win-lose agreement with different business partners or suppliers or intermediaries, these stakeholders tend to withdraw. They tend not to cooperate, and in some cases, they might leave negative reviews online, bringing about a negative reputation for your company, which push away some potential high-quality investor, push away some talented employees that might work for your company, push away some high-quality customer. So I always say in my talks that I deliver worldwide that the most important factor in business is the human being. It's not artificial intelligence, it's not technology, it's not information, but it's the human being, because the human being is a meta resource. It's a resource that help companies generate other resources, such as, for example, marketing strategies, innovative products, new services, non-traditional systems and policies. So when we care for the human beings, the other aspects of business that are very important, such as profit, market share, are taken care of themselves by themselves. Why? Because the human being will help us achieve these key performance indicators: profit, market share, productivity.
Yeah. So as you're developing this, did you get a lot of negative feedback from maybe other companies or those who didn't agree with you?
Yes. They told me in some cases, I find a lot of resistance. I found two groups of company. Group of company that are more accepting, more welcoming with their views, much more open-minded. And a second group of companies, traditional companies that have been using the traditional business model, which is only profit-driven. And these companies, in some cases, they might not laugh at this new paradigm overtly, but they say, we don't have time to apply this model. We have to look for profits. We don't have time to be kind to people because it doesn't bring any positive result on our bottom line. And when I explain to them that, for example, there are some very important business studies that, for example, corroborate the fact that when you develop a kind workplace, what we call a psychologically safe workplace, where employees are supported on a regular basis, employees are mentored, coached, the employees are trained on a regular basis, but these employees are also in this workplace, the opinions of these employees are welcome. They are not ridiculed. And new ideas are also welcome in a very kind way. And also these employees are supported on a regular basis and they are cooperating with each other. There is a trust-based workplace. In these workplaces, we call psychologically safe workplaces, according to research, there is higher employee satisfaction. Employees are more satisfied, they're more productive, more motivated. Higher customer satisfaction. Why? Because employees that are satisfied, their needs are duly met, they tend to serve customers in a much more effective way. They tend to be kinder, they tend to be much more obliging, they adopt naturally an attitude of service to our customers. And this impact on positive customer reviews. This brings about more customer reviews that are positive. But also in these workplaces, according to research, science-based research, there is lower absenteeism, lower turnover, lower stress level. Why? Because people don't feel pressurized. There is no burnout or very low rates of burnout, and people want to go to work. So lower absenteeism and lower turnover. Why? Because people love to work for that company. And all these indicators impact positively on the bottom line, profits going up, and on the company's reputation. If you see this company, for example, on some platforms such as Glassdoor, Glassdoor is a platform where employees can leave their reviews about the company, could be positive or negative, could be saying, this is a kind workplace, you should be working for that company, it could be saying the opposite. These employees' reviews are very positive, and the customer reviews about the product offered by the company are also very positive, what bring about a good brand image, a good reputation, which attract more customers, more talented employees, better investors. So it's a positive cycle. So being kind is not only being nice, it's strengthening, it's brightening the relationship with different stakeholders so that they can cooperate in a very spontaneous way, and they can contribute to this key performance indicator: profitability, productivity, efficiency. And this creates a positive cycle of reciprocity. This means that we're supporting people, we're supporting customer, employees, community members, suppliers, and they're supporting us in return. We're being kind and generous and grateful to them, and they're responding in a similar way. So they're responding in a reciprocal way. Many companies act in the opposite way. They are dismissing customer. They are not very caring with employees. And what happened? All these stakeholders withdraw. They're not cooperating. In some cases, employees leave the company for other job opportunity. Customer will leave negative reviews and will leave, also other stakeholders might be acting against the company.
Yeah, that's really great. And I've seen it. I've seen it many times. So what would How would a company that has never worked that way before, how would they start incorporating something like that into their company? I mean, it can't be comfortable for them.
Yes, very important. First step is to be self-aware that this model is possible. And this model is not only strengthening relationship with different stakeholders, but also is bringing about concrete economic impacts. In practice, you have to observe a company. When we analyze companies, when we're delivering consultancy services with companies, we analyze what they are doing wrongly and how can this be changed in a very simple way with simple steps. What I observe that many companies, for example, let's talk about the workplace. They cannot develop this psychologically safe workplace because there is a lot of fear. There is a lot of fear, and fear-based workplaces tend not to be compassionate workplaces. Why? What are the type of fear that I observe in my practice? I observe that in some cases in the workplace, employees are fearful of making mistakes and being penalized, fearful of being outpaced by their colleagues. For example, if there is only one promotion, well, instead of cooperating with their colleagues, they start competing with their colleagues. And when you start competing with their colleagues, how you can participate in a cooperative way in joint projects, in collective projects? No, you will try to fight with this colleague. But also in some cases, I see a lot of fear of innovating. Companies that are very, very traditional, they try to prevent employees from rocking the boat. So let's not do things in a different way. Let's keep this as traditional as possible, business as usual. So, and this type of fear, in some cases, employees are fearful of being fired, especially when companies are threatening employees to downsize or to reduce the structure, organizational structure. And when you are fearful, it's not my view, but according to psychologists and social psychology, when you're fearful, you tend to adopt a defensive mode, what we call the freeze, fight, flight mode, which puts you in a state of alert and also in a cautious state. And you tend to feel threatened by, for example, colleagues or by the potential situation where you are fired or you are penalized. And when you are fearful, your discerning skills, critical analysis skills, creative skills, and others are temporarily impaired. You cannot be so productive. You cannot be so creative. Why? Because you're in a defensive mode. What I always ask these companies to analyze together when we're delivering these services, what are the pockets of fear? Are there many policies within the company that are fear-based, that punish employees if they don't act in a certain way? Is there a lot of micromanaging? Because micromanaging is based on fear. Why is based on fear? Because we don't trust employees that they can do their best according to their skill, their capabilities, and we're treating them like they are naughty children, and they are not naughty children. They cannot give their best because they are continually limited, and they have to ask for permission in some cases for very simple decisions. They don't have any discretion, they don't have any autonomy, freedom to act in the best way they know according to their skill and their expertise. And in some cases, I observe companies that deliver feedback in a punitive way, in a penalizing way. They try to admonish this employee. They say, you did this wrong, and they frame this situation, this setback of this employee in a negative way, instead of showing the way to improvement, instead of coaching this employee, instead of treating these employees in a humane way, in a kind way, so that this employee can learn. So fear is generally incompatible with what we call a compassionate workplace or a psychologically safe workplace. So why? Because they are opposite energies. So, and in practice, this is the first step, discovering the pockets of fear. But then with very simple steps, one that these pockets are discovered, acting the opposite way. I mentioned in my book that compassion is one of the most important values in business, which implies understanding how people think, how people feel in certain situations, and try to help them, especially when they face challenging situations. Let's give an example. For example, let's imagine that we are the manager And we have one of the employees that we manage that is going through a very challenging time, and we discovered they're going through a very challenging time at home. They have, for example, some health issue with the dependent, and a compassionate manager will have a one-to-one talk to this employee. Won't try to dismiss the situation. Won't try to pretend that this is not there. But they try to talk one-to-one. They will take their time and will try to see how they can help this employee, how this employee can be helped. For example, providing them with flexible hours, providing them with some time off for them to take care of their relatives, providing them with some, for example, counseling. Some companies have some counseling services free for this employee that could be, in some cases, very difficult mental health challenge because of this situation. So this means that we care for the relationship, we care for the human being. We don't treat this employee like a cog or a part of the machinery that need to be continually working, like a robot automaton that doesn't have a life, doesn't have emotion, doesn't have a family. This employee is a flesh and bone human being that have families, dreams, can have some health problems, challenges, bad experiences, positive experience, dreams, aspiration. If we treat them only what we call an instrumental way, means this employee is only a means to an end, is a tool that we use to achieve more profits, this employee might feel dehumanized and might feel that they're not being treated in a compassionate way. And according to a very interesting study, is that when employees feel that they're not treated in a compassionate way, they have a negative image of their workplace, their colleagues, but also they have a negative image of the whole company. And this can affect the reviews about this workplace that can be left, for example, in Glassdoor or any other website where the employees judge and criticize the company, either in a positive way or in a negative way. So this means that when employees feel treated in a compassionate way, supported, they are assisted whenever needed, but also should offer some help whenever possible, and doesn't have to be an economic help. In some cases, giving an ear is very important because there is a full chapter in my book about generosity and business. When I talk about generosity, we don't have resources to provide our stakeholders. In some cases, the most important resources are intangible. Giving an ear, giving some advice, giving maybe some counseling, maybe some coaching and mentoring, supposing that this employee has a low performance. Can we train them? Can we coach them? Can there be some training on the job? Can we help them through mentoring? This is quite relevant. Can we give them some advice or technical information? Many cases, being generous with intangible things is as important as being generous with tangible things. What will be tangible thing? Giving this employee a bonus or giving economic support. Both things are very important.
Yeah, you brought up a good point that a lot of, I'm not going to say a lot of, I'll say some companies will say, we just can't afford the extra support for time off because we really need all of our employees here. We can't afford to have pay for the extra that we need to pay for counseling or other things. So what do you say to them on how to manage the finances and still provide this happy environment?
Well, what I will say to them is that if you don't support them in different way, this employee is more prone to leave the company, which will represent an additional cost of recruiting new employees, training from the scratch, and also in some cases, if you don't help them, in some cases, this employee might get burnout, but this will imply higher medical bills. This might create also a much more stressful workplace, which will bring about not only a negative impact on this employee, but also the whole workplace, because in the workplace, all employees are interdependent with each other. So the idea is that if we think about only the bottom line and the profits and the market share and productivity, in some cases, if we solely focus on this aspect, we tend to achieve this aspect by all means, which implies exploiting employees, not caring for them, in some cases going on the edge of the illegal aspect of the workplace or unethical aspect, deceiving customer. Why? Because we want the highest profit with products that might be low quality. We care only about the profit. We don't care about customer satisfaction. In some cases, polluting the environment. We care only about the lowest cost of production. Could be the most polluting one. And what happened? This can bring about a lot of problems, not only environmental problems, but also might be the company might be receiving some negative response from the community, boycotting and other aspect, certain type of action from the community that would affect potentially the company reputation. So this means that when we focus solely on the economic aspect, we tend to deplete our most important resource, that is the human beings, the relationship with different stakeholders. And this affects the company's reputation. And the company reputation, when affected negatively, will bring about lower profit, lower market share, lower share price, lower productivity. So it's all negative.
Right.
It's counterintuitive, but in practice, when we focus, and I mentioned this in my book, when we focus on building a strong, lasting relationship with the stakeholder, this means that we satisfy all their needs, because stakeholders don't have only economic needs. They have, all stakeholders have different type of needs. They have economic needs, for example, employees need a good salary. They have emotional needs. They need to be cared for. They need to be appreciated. They need to be recognized, supported when necessary. They have mental needs, need for a stimulation. For example, employees don't want to feel bored. They don't want to feel demotivated. They need to be trained, coached on a regular basis so that they learn new skills, they enhance their current skills. And also social skills means that employees can work with one another, they can socialize, they have, in some cases, some non-business meeting where they can socialize on a regular basis, that they can know each other in a much more humane way. When we take into account all these needs that are not only economic, you build a strong, long-lasting relationship with these stakeholders, including employees, customers, and others. And these stakeholders help you voluntarily to achieve this profit, market share, productivity, high reputation. So you cannot force them to cooperate. You cannot force them to cooperate, but they can cooperate willingly when you help them. You help them and you're helping yourself. If you are not helping them, you are not supporting them, you are dismissing and you are non-compassionate, you are shooting on your foot, because all these stakeholders will go against us. Why customer will leave positive reviews if you're selling low quality products and you're taking advantage of them and you're offering shoddy products? Why employees will leave positive reviews about your company if you're exploiting them? You're not paying extra hours, you're paying less than minimum salary, you're not caring for their emotional needs, you're not recognizing when they work overtime. Some employees give more than half their day to work for a company, and they don't receive even a thank you note for their contribution. I feel that this is heartless. Why? Because if you don't reinforce positive behavior by being appreciative, by giving a thank you note, by recognizing this employee in a public event so that they feel that they count, this employee, how you expect in the future to continue contributing for your company in an unconditional way? This employee might think, you know what? I haven't been recognized. I don't count here. I wasted my time. Even I have a so-so salary, I might look for another company that I feel much more motivated, that my contribution is meaningful.
Yeah, so you're definitely going to have a higher turnover if you don't have employees who are satisfied where they're working, or where they feel like they just don't matter. So why should they stay there? They'll go look for something else. So I'm thinking for the entrepreneur who's looking forward, looking at when they're going to have more and more employees, how do they set up a structure so that they can take care of anything? Do you have some kind of a plan or formula set up so they can get the structure in place as their business grows?
Yeah, the structure of every business will depend on the activity, the product and services that they serve, and also the offer to the marketplace. But what I won't focus so much on the structure. The structure might vary from company to company, but we'll focus on some principles that are very important. For example, regardless of the structure, if it is very hierarchical or not, what I found that companies that are most successfully are the companies where they tend to have not so much a hierarchical organization where the levels are very well delimited and people on the top are acting in a know-it-all or non-humble way, but
Right.
they're companies that are always welcoming feedback from all sides or nooks of the company. This means that they're very open to feedback. Company, for example, that where employees can give feedback to the managers and vice versa. It's not one-way feedback. And for example, where feedback can be given, for example, from the production department to the marketing department and vice versa. Companies, for example, when you have, for example, department, marketing department, accounting department, human resources, but they have a lot of what we call cross-departmental meeting or cross-functional meeting, where you have representative of different departments. And when different departments, when there are important decisions, can give their views on this decision. This means they give the decision from the marketing perspective, from the accounting perspective, from the productive perspective, and so on. And companies also that are open to feedback in general. This means that employees do not feel fear of making new suggestions or proposing innovative products that can be sold in the market or improving the way that we deal with customers, we serve customers. So this means that these companies, regardless of the structure, are open to change, are open to innovation. Because imagine that in this turbulent marketplace and turbulent business environment, what is important is to be adaptive and to innovate whenever possible. In my book, I have two chapters about innovation in business, and what I found that companies that are innovative, and innovative in a general way with new products and services, but also innovative in the way that they serve customer or they deliver the product to customer and so on, these companies tend to be more adapted to changing conditions. Instead, when an employee feels more satisfied, why? Because they can provide the company with inputs, valuable input, and they feel that they count. They feel this is what's very important. They feel that they're contributing in a meaningful way to the business purpose. Instead, some companies have very clear roles where the one making the decision is not open to input from any other area of the company, and is one making the decision, concentrated generally on the top, and the other ones will be implemented the decision. And there is no communication between them. And in this company that are acting the wrong way, you have what we call silos. Silos are departments that are not communicating with one another. The marketing department will have their shares of power, but they won't share any information or resources with other departments. They're acting in a very isolated way. These companies are less prone to progress, to thrive. Another point that I observe regarding the structure is we have to give time to the employees to have a rest. And this is, I'm talking about a very obvious thing, but believe it or not, I see some companies here in the UK where employees are bombarded by emails, 7 or 8 Zoom meetings a day. How can employees can take a little break to have a coffee with a colleague, to a break to revitalize and replenish their energy and come back to clear their focus and then come back much more focused, much more centered on what needs to be done? Some companies' employees cannot even talk about what they have done during the weekend because they don't have time to have a sandwich.
Oh.
On the other side, I see companies that are acting in a very excellent way. And what they do, not only they give enough time during the day for employees to have the minimal rest, what is very important for replenishing their own energy, but also they have what I call social events. They have, for example, one social event a week where employees can meet after work to, for example, have dinner. There are no roles in those meetings. Employee can talk, for example, the CEO can be talking to the customer service officer one-to-one, like they were friends. And people let their hair down there in this meeting, and so they're relaxed, they are acting like colleagues, like friends. They know aspects of their life that are not related to their roles, their family, hobbies, friends, pastimes, and what they do during holidays. and they come back to work differently, revitalized, refreshed. This type of social event strengthen the bonds between employees, and they tend to become much more productive. They tend to become much more creative, more cooperative. They know in these meetings, they know on a mental and emotional level and much more human level. And this affects the workplace in a positive way, creating much more trust in the workplace, much more cooperation, and much more psychological safety.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I was thinking about some of the places that I've worked in, especially in factory work. A lot of people aren't happy in factory work unless they're in a community that do care about each of its employees. Um, you've got the ones who make sure that you're okay. You've got all the safety equipment you need, that you're taking your breaks, that you're you're just have everything you need as an employee, and you don't have to worry about anything. And then I've been in the companies where it's like, well, we have to cut back, so you're going to have to work overtime. We don't have all the safety features here. I mean, we've got enough to pass OSHA, but nothing more than that. And it's very, very different work environments. Uh, yeah, on either one, sometimes you feel like you can't leave because maybe they're the only job in town that's paying anything. If you go to the smaller towns, but I've even been in the smaller towns where you have that, but they treat you really well. And I don't really understand why an employee would not want to treat an employer would not want to treat their employees well, to make sure that they're cared of. And I understand sometimes, they've got production coming up and whatnot that they have to meet, but um, I don't know if you have it over there, but we had a job over, or a television program over here called Dirty Jobs. And he would go into these companies, and some of them he would go into would be laughing and joyful and helping each other. And most of them were really good, but every once in a while you'd see him be an employee where everything was very strict on how everything was done. Um, and it was quite interesting to see that, to see the
It's
difference
interesting.
on employees themselves.
Yes, and I want to mention about this issue is that emotions, according to science, are contagious. So this
Mm,
means that when
very
people
true.
start treating one another, positive emotions are contagious and negative emotions are contagious. So let's imagine that we have the boss coming to the workplace and he's coming very angry and shouting at employees. I have seen this myself, shouting at employees, treating these employees in a very despectful way, in a very disparaging way. And these employees that probably were before in a good mood, they absorbed, they were infected by this anger, and they started experiencing negative emotion. Let's compare this situation with the situation where the boss come in a very good mood and treat his employees as family. How are you? In some cases, the boss even gives some hugs to the employees. I've seen this too. So,
Yeah.
and this creates a different workplace. Why? Because people tend to be more productive when they experience positive emotion. According to research studies, when people experience positive emotion, they tend to be more creative, more motivated. So, and they tend to be much more insightful with their ideas. Instead, when people are infused negative emotion and they start experiencing this negative emotion, they're more prone to adopt what we mentioned before, this freeze, fight, fly mode, a defensive mode. I don't trust my boss, but I don't trust my colleagues. I don't want to share resources. I feel a bit like a threatened. I'm not sure I would. Let's try to act safe. I don't want to act in a non-traditional way. I try to keep this to the minimum. Let's work by the book. It's
Yeah.
not good.
And I've heard, I haven't looked at the numbers myself, but I've heard that in companies where they are more angry, I guess, more tense, tend to have a lot more injuries than the companies where they feel that they're worthwhile, that they're valued.
It's possible because employees, when they feel threatened by the emotions of others, they feel infected by this negative emotion. We have to admit that this employee, their discerning skill might be lessened, might be temporarily impaired, and they might not be thinking very clearly. Their critical analysis skills that are very important to make good decisions, to manage, for example, risky equipment in a safe way, could be impaired, this skill. So it's very important to take into account that positivity tend to bring about positivity in the workplace.
Right.
The same happen with negativity. Negative emotion, treating others in an unkind way, generate a negative cycle of reciprocity. When people start, imagine that they see from the boss treating others in a negative way, in an unkind way. This boss is a negative role model. This is the model that we have. Maybe we start emulating this model, but it's the wrong model. So, and this generates a lot of distrust, a lot of lack of cooperation, and people are not caring for one another. What brings about negative results, and many people obviously are more prone to leave the company or get ill or being absent, or in some cases become more stressed.
Yeah, or they bring it home, and now all of that they've been dealing with, they start putting onto their family, and they don't
Exactly.
realize how much that stress is at home. We had a family member actually who worked in a very high stress situation, and it was all about getting to others first and trying to slide in under other companies and outbid them and things like this. I mean, it was pretty shady and whatnot. And that family member didn't even realize that they were acting that way at home too. Totally different personality. And once they went to a different company, within a month, it was like a whole different person. And when when someone had said to them, it's like, wow, I can sure tell you're working at a better place now. They were like, why? It's like you're a whole different person. And they didn't think that the company affected them. They knew what it was like there, but they were trying to fight it the whole time. But they didn't realize that it had still affected them and it had affected their family.
This is so important because you know what? Many companies do not even think about the concept of work-life balance.
Yeah,
Work-life balance. It's not only work. We're human beings. Before becoming employees, these are family members. They have friends, they have acquaintances and other relatives. And when you do not bring about a work-life balance, this tend to bring about negative effect on, for example, family environment and other environment. And these employees tend to be a bit resentful toward this company because they don't have time to see their children well or to care for their partner and so on. Instead of what I observe that there are other companies that are acting in a much more compassionate way. And what they do, in some cases, they offer this employee nursery inside. So this
yeah,
means where the employee can take their children, they can see during midday or during their break, they can see their children. This is paid by the company, and this employee, according to the assessment and the survey, is more productive and more satisfied. Why? Because they take a problem of their mind. In some
that's
cases, these
right.
employees are provided by counseling services. This means that if they have any problem, any challenge that could be unrelated to work, these employees supported by professionals that are dedicated to this employee well-being, because they know that when employees experience this state of well-being, tend to be not only better outside work, but better at work. Because employee, you cannot separate this dimension, the non-work dimension, family, friends, from the work dimension. Everything is interconnected. If the employee have some challenges at home, this will affect the work.
Yes,
And many companies don't understand this. Employees do not leave their emotions when they enter the company. But I see many companies that are not compassionate, that employees cannot talk about their emotion because the manager feel that this emotion can be disruptive of the workplace and so on. But employees cannot get rid of their emotion. They suppress or repress, and this will affect directly their performance, their creativity, their effectiveness.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us, how can people get a hold of you to learn more about this, and where can they get your book?
Okay, well, the book is titled The Art of Compassionate Business, published by Routledge. This can be found online, Amazon or any other website, Barnes & Noble, but also physical bookstores worldwide. So this is all worldwide. And this is the second edition that have more than 450 pages and include hundreds of cases of compassionate organization from different sectors: service, manufacturing, big companies, small company, non-profit organization, and give a lot of examples of research-based evidence on how to become more generous, grateful, and meaningful and human-oriented in business. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can type Bruno Cignacco with double C at the end. And they can find me also on my website, www.brunocignacco.com. I spell BRUNOCIGNACCO.com. Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much for being here. This has been very valuable. And
thank you very much,
audience, for listening in today. And we'll see you next time on Wisdom on the Front Porch. Thank you.
Thank you, my Front Porch friends and neighbors, for pulling up a chair with me and my guest today on Wisdom on the Front Porch. Now, if you've got value from this conversation, would you do me a favor? Leave a quick review, then share it with someone you know who could use some inspiration. It helps more friends find their seat on the porch. And hey, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss what's next. Until then, keep the porch light on for new wisdom every time you show up. Your seat's always here for you on the porch.